The explanation of the causes and sources of most earthquakes is given in the framework of the theory of plate tectonics. At the edges of the plates, geological structures of the Earth are most affected by forces that result from the movement and collision of plates. It is there that the largest seismic phenomena, earthquakes, occur. However, earthquakes often occur in the inner parts of the plates, and the theory of plate tectonics does not provide any logical explanation for this. Enter text in this field. Earthquake hypocenters are located at any depth from few meters to 700 to 900 kilometers. The explanation of the causes of deep earthquakes is still a mystery, since the laws of hydrodynamics do not allow elastic forces accumulate in the liquid medium of the mantle, and the supposed edge of the lithosphere sinking into the mantle would quickly melt. After watching this video, we can confidently say that earthquakes occur due to mutual friction of tectonic plates. They are based on the mechanical influence of an anomalous change in gravity, leading to fluctuations in soil and air. The general level of gravitational field of our planet has a tendency toward gradual decrease. This leads to the expansion of deep rocks, atmosphere, and the aquatic medium in the oceans and for our planet as a whole. This process occurs gradually and evenly without any particular fluctuations, so some of them are recorded only by sensitive seismic equipment. A centrifugal force is essential to this process, as with anomalous decrease in the level of gravitational density in certain zones, outthrust the rock mass from the center by expanding it evenly throughout the depth. However, the centrifugal force also cannot explain the occurrence of an earthquake source at certain depths. If there is a sharp fluctuation in the level of gravitational density in separate areas, it is accompanied by an increase and expansion of the gravitationally compressed rock mass at different depths of the specified area of the planet. In turn, this causes seismic cataclysms. An earthquake is a process of instantaneous release of accumulated anomalous gravitational energy. It is the gravity that can release the energy enough to create an earthquake. The study of the factors that accompany powerful earthquakes demonstrates the presence of signs in change of the level of gravitational density. At the same time, the dynamics of rock expansion in the hypocenter of an earthquake is transmitted not only vertically, but also along the circumference. As a result, referring to the figure, a shear in the rock expansion is transmitted to the Earth's surface in waves around the epicenter. However, the shock comes not from the epicenter, but from the hypocenter. Delaying of surface shock in a direction away from the epicenter is significant to such undulation from the hypocenter. This forms a shaking effect in the form of an outgoing wave from the epicenter and creates surface oscillation in horizontal plane. The depth of pressure relief depends on focusing shape and depth of gravitation and magnetic swirl. This process is especially evident if the cyclones coincide with similar gravitational and anomalous zones in the lithosphere. There will be a release from the internal gravitational stresses of the planet. This will lead to seismic events in this area of the planetary surface. When the surface of the Earth begins complex oscillatory translational motions, a human being crouches or crawls along the ground to maintain stability. At the first episode, people in the street are either crouching or holding onto pipes or trees. At the same time, pay attention to the bundles of hanging wires in the episode 2. They make oscillatory movements, as if under the pressure of a strong wind. delaying movement in the extreme left position. At this point, all people and motorcyclists begin to run and turn left. Only after a while, everything returns to the opposite position. It seems that gravity has changed the direction of pressure with a horizontal slope to the left. To explain this phenomenon, let's consider some signs of oscillation. In the third episode, the behavior of motorcyclists is interesting. They turn their transport simultaneously toward the shock and stop. Now let's pay attention to the flag in the hand of the sculpture, which suddenly begins to flutter as if gusty wind has appeared. Maybe gusty winds occur during seismic shocks. Then the assumption arises that seismic vibrations are transmitted to both air and gaseous media. Does the tree in the background sway differently in the next episode? At the same time, its crown sways slowly, but all leaves and branches wave simultaneously. In the fourth episode, let's pay attention how standing people waggle. If the floor underfoot goes to the right, the standing person should lean to the left and only then stand up straight. However, in this situation, he oscillates simultaneously with the floor with his whole body. Perhaps the building floor and the person's body are equally and simultaneously affected by a seismic wave, similar to the force of a shock in a swaying bus crowded with people. In the fifth episode, you can clearly see how the surface of the Earth rises vertically and only after that cracks appear. On the ground, the surface of the Earth rises vertically, after which the oscillation begins. A woman's gait, as if she is drunk, clearly demonstrates the direction which way the surface of the Earth was moving. In the sixth episode, let's look at the behavior of birds. It is obvious that when everything is collapsed below, they try to rise up quickly. But nevertheless, if the bird shakes and throws in different directions in the air, it is favorably for the bird to fly up strictly vertically. During shocks and vibrations, they take off strictly vertically and, in the absence of seismic waves, begin to spin horizontally. This behavior of birds is not common and deserves close attention. Do you agree with this conclusion? In the seventh episode, a tangible earthquake was recorded. Everything around was calm, the weather was clear, and there was no wind. Suddenly, a person in the foreground starts to crouch and crawl on all fours in order not to fall. Here, the seismic influence is clearly expressed in the vibrations of wires and palm leaves. Anything that hangs freely starts to swing. Let's pay attention to them and consider in slow scrolling. The oscillation amplitude of palm trunks is small, but their branches of leaves sway actively, as in a strong gusty wind. At the same time, their frequency fluctuates in different ways and in different directions. Wires do the same. A parked minibus in the left foreground, despite the brake, moves forward and backward. It should be noted that almost all video recording on the streets was made by video cameras rigidly fixed to buildings, which also sway synchronously with the ground. For this reason, the movement of the Earth's surface in video recording seems static and their movement is not noticed. Let's pay attention to the ice cream seller, the 8th episode. His ice cream stand, despite the parking brake, suddenly starts to move. The umbrella on the ice cream stand sways like a sail blown by the wind. The seller is trying with all his might to stop it, which he succeeds with difficulty. In the ninth episode, a patio is fixed. Everything is quiet and suddenly strong seismic tremors occur, as if a hurricane-force wind has blown. Everything comes into motion: bushes, branches, and leaves. A small bush in a pot sways quickly, while the oscillation of the pot coincides with the amplitude of the oscillation of branches and leaves. However, when seismic shocks stop, separate leaves in the foreground fall down smoothly, which indicates the absence of wind. It should be taken into account that when the base moves, the surface of the Earth, everything that hangs freely begins to swing according to the pendulum method with a similar amplitude in the opposite direction of the Earth's movement. Inertia starts to act, which makes hanging objects to vibrate. The 10th episode clearly demonstrates the force of seismic influence on the water in the pool. In this case, the water wave goes forward and quickly changes the direction of its splash clockwise. Pendulum oscillations of hanging objects indicate that horizontal directions of seismic shocks change dynamically, often perpendicularly. As a result, freely hanging objects receive the influence of a circular rotational action in a clockwise direction. This is a complex movement. Notice how the chandeliers spin horizontally. They make horizontal circular rotations. Fluctuations of different amplitudes of 3 plafonds in the episode 11 show that some other force selectively acts on the middle plafond. Maybe it is airflow from a window or something else. But nevertheless, this is a unique phenomenon, which is difficult to explain. In the episode 12, it is clearly seen that the bridge on the roof of the skyscraper, freely hanging on cables, swings synchronously with the skyscraper building. This fact shows that a certain force of seismic influence is equally applied to the building and the bridge. Otherwise, the bridge should swing in the opposite direction. And from this we can deduce that during an earthquake, seismic shocks can quickly change the direction of the horizontal impact clockwise, repeating the movements of water cycles or air tornadoes. Seismic shocks are transmitted to all objects equally synchronously and propagate everywhere. Let's look at the blue plaque on this episode. Its unnatural fluctuations show that on one chord the plate cannot repeat all the complexities of the movement of the building's ceiling. But nevertheless, the plate sways, breaks sharply, bounces, or stops. A more massive TV, hanging on a rigid stand, also oscillates and suddenly starts bouncing. Episode 13 demonstrates a parking lot under a canopy. Let us pay attention to the free rolling of an oblong lamp hanging on one electric wire. Its uneven wobble, bounce, and other twisting motions show that it is being subjected to forces from different directions. It swings in the transverse direction and suddenly begins to move in the longitudinal direction, while making a turn clockwise in the horizontal plane. These unnatural complex oscillations can only occur when many forces act on it from different directions. While of a rotational nature, it seems that strong jets of air alternately blow on it from different directions. I tried to repeat these oscillations with a long stick on a cord, but one can get such effect be created by a more complex hand movement. On the 14th episode, we observe the transmission of seismic waves in the aquatic environment. A Turkish tanker on the high seas fell into the zone of underwater earthquakes. The hull of the tanker, superstructures, cables of lifting mechanisms were shaking, making a strong crack and knock on metal. At the same time, there were no strong rolls to the side or inclinations of the tanker. The weather was calm. There were no noticeable waves. The entire crew of the tanker was scared. They did not understand what was happening. The relatively calm surface of the water oscillated in small, short, non-uniform waves. All these vibrations of freely hanging objects can be explained by the transmission of vibrations of the Earth's surface. However, if you look closely, you will notice the difference in their vibrations and make sure that seismic vibrations occur in a completely different way from how we all imagined it before. Freely hanging objects during strong earthquakes often perform a complex oscillatory movement, which indicates a complex multidirectional oscillation of the Earth's surface. At the same time, some movements of freely hanging objects show that the impulse of seismic movements cannot be repeated by transmission directly from oscillating objects, the Earth, a pole, a tree, etc. Interestingly, the vestibular system of humans and birds during seismic shocks may partially lose their ability to navigate. This leads to the conclusion during an earthquake. Freely hanging objects oscillate synchronously with the surface of the Earth. Their horizontal oscillation is different from the oscillation amplitude transmission arm. Based on the above-mentioned consequence, one can conclude that seismic vibrations propagate everywhere like an X-ray wave, like gamma rays in the soil and the Earth's atmosphere. A seismic wave is a multi-directional wave force similar to gravity and has a significant effect in a clockwise horizontal rotation. An earthquake is a complex process. It cannot be explained by simple friction, sliding, and deformation of tectonic plates. In this catastrophic phenomenon, an active role is played by gravitational forces, the anomalies of which compress and expand the rock and the atmosphere. All this is described in detail in my research work, Gravity and Natural Phenomena.
This whole idea and hypothesis are described in detail in the theory, The Influence of Gravity on Natural Phenomena by Adaev. The link to the text is provided at the end of the video. Subscribe to my scientific and educational channel. In the following videos I will talk about the role of gravity in the formation of a cyclone and volcanic eruption. You will learn sensational secrets about the principles of gravity formation. You will be surprised to learn that gravity plays a major role in the secrets of the pyramid.